Snow Treasure by Marie McSwiggan, Chapter 2. When Peter told his father about seeing Uncle Victor that afternoon, he saw a look of alarm come over his face. Now that was strange, because although the two brothers were different in every way, there was a strong bond between them. Was Uncle Victor in some sort of trouble? Peter wondered, but when he asked his mother, she shook her head. Well, why did Father go out? He asked. You know he never does at night. He says he's tired after a day at the bank and likes to stay home. Yes, I know, his mother replied. And he's busier than ever right now, and so must be very tired. A treasury official has been here from Oslo, and your father has had to work very hard. He's worried. Is it because we're going to be poor? Lovisa asked. Is there something wrong with the bank? For Lovisa and Peter had always lived in horror of something wrong with the bank. Not that I know of, Lovisa, her mother answered. The bank has more gold than ever. Well, then why is Father worried? He used to play a lot with Bunny. Peter referred to his 4-year-old brother. Now he hardly even notices him. Is it about the war? He asked as an afterthought. About the Nazis taking Poland? For even up in the Arctic Circle, the disturbance of that year could not be overlooked. Yes, Peter, it has something to do with that. But don't worry, your father's a capable man. Everything he gets his hands on turns out all right. Peter was awakened out of a sound sleep that night. To his room came the tramp of heavy boots. Then bang, 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 bang. Boots kicked the outside wall to shake off snow. Then there was more banging of the storm doors, and the house door as well. Then came voices. He wondered what could be the matter. He got up to see. It was unlike anything he could remember to have people coming into the house late at night. His father was speaking when Peter got to the door of the living room. He was bent over the hearth, raking the embers of the dying fire. Père Garçon, the old houseman, shuffled in to look and took the fire irons away from him. They'll never get our gold. His father turned to face the men he had brought home with him. His voice was low and hoarse. Not an ounce of it will they touch. Of that I am determined. How much does it amount to, now that the last shipment is here? John Olson, the clockmaker, asked. It's a bullion, of course, Mr. Lundstrom replied. And it's more than 13 tons. And Peter was banker's son enough to know that bullion was the gold before it is made into money. 13 tons! Michael Berg's father exclaimed. Why, that would be 30 million kroner! More, his father replied. It's nearer 40 million. Whew, came a whistle, and Peter saw his Uncle Victor. That's around $9 million in the United States. Uncle Victor had spent much time in America. He and Peter's father had a brother in Minnesota, and Victor had visited there. More often than not, he spoke of dollars, rather than the Norwegian coin, the krone. Peter made a move into the room, and it was then they saw him. Peter, his father spoke harshly, go back to bed and close the door. Wait a minute, Lars. Uncle Victor addressed his older brother. Peter's nearly 13. It's Peter and the ones his age who can save our gold. I see it now. Why didn't we think of it before? We've spent the night considering everything from reindeer sleds to tri-motor planes, and here we have the answer right under our noses. The children. They looked at Uncle Victor in surprise, but he only stepped up and put his arm around Peter's shoulders. This is no boy's game, his father spoke less sharply, and when he looked at Peter, there was a sadness in his eyes. Go to bed, son. His father was kind. Wait, Lars. Let me talk to Peter. When he goes to bed, I'll show you how we're going to save our bullion. He drew Peter toward the fire and threw a coat over his pajamas. How many children in Ryswick School, Peter? 40? There are nearly 50, Uncle Victor. And how many do you suppose are over 10? Oh, gee whiz, Uncle Victor, I don't know. Maybe half? You mean girls, too? Of course I mean girls, too. He spoke hurriedly. Now, Peter, when I was a boy, we thought nothing of a sled trip to the Snake. It's 9 miles, but we were young and tough, not soft like you. We thought nothing of a trip like that. We go to the Snake, too, Peter retorted, glaring. He never knew when Uncle Victor was teasing him. Of course you wouldn't start at Ryswick. There'd be 2 or 3 miles before you started. That makes maybe 12 miles. Think you could do it? Or would you be crying for Mama all the time? Uncle Victor, I don't know what you're talking about. But I know that Michael and I and lots of others have been on sled trips that lasted a week, and we didn't cry for our mamas either. You'll do, boy. You'll do all right. But there's another part, and that's the dangerous part. Victor, for all the gold in Norway, I won't have my son in danger, Mr. Lundstrom cut in. Peter wants a chance to help his country too, don't you, fellow? Peter nodded. He wouldn't trust his voice. So you wouldn't mind if you met an enemy, one that carried a gun? Peter was breathless. His eyes were bright. This was the way Uncle Victor lived. There was excitement wherever he was. And you wouldn't tell, would you, Peter? They could pull your tongue out, and you'd never say a word that would hurt your country. Victor, Mr. Lundstrom protested. Enough of this. I know what you mean, and it may be our only chance. But don't go on frightening Peter. You're all right, youngster. You'll do. Uncle Victor gave Peter a terrible thump on the back. And that's it for Chapter 2.